Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation and welcoming back to the channel, Kevin Julie. How's it going, mate?
Good, yourself, Peter?
I'm doing well, mate. I'm doing well. Um, I'm going to talk about an album that surprisingly I've never covered on the channel, and it is Uriah Heep and Look at Yourself. So let's flash up the album. Here you go, all in its reflector glory. This was
Mm,
a 1971 album. In my opinion, sort of solidified the legend of Uriah Heep. It was a lineup that was only there briefly, but you're starting to see Uriah Heep forming their sonics, weren't you, Kevin? Because those
yeah,
first two albums, they were dabbling in prog, dabbling in psychedelia, but this one you're starting to see what Uriah Heep were going to be all about. So this was the lineup of David Byron on lead vocals, Mickey Box on lead guitar, Ken Hensley on organ and piano, Paul Newton on bass guitar, did an interview with him coming soon to Rock
mhm.
Daydream Nation, and Ian Clark on drums. So you're a huge Uriah Heep fan. Where do you rank this in your where it stands in the Heap discography?
Top two between this one and Demons and Wizards. I think there's a lot of fans that are kind of, you know, either one. So it's kind of, I usually go with Demons and Wizards, but this one is kind of the one that got the ball rolling as far as that heavy sound and direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And this lineup was oh so brief, but there definitely was some significant chemistry, and a lot of the songs on this album are played to this day, rusted on. So
Yeah.
what we'll do is we'll go song by song, talk about the performances, little anecdotes in between, and at the end of it, we'll just give our view of the album in 2026 and what we think of it. So
Yep.
this was produced by Jerry Bron, who was the manager come producer for the band, engineered by Peter Gallen. Can I say straight off the bat, Kevin, this is a beautiful sounding album for
Yeah.
1971. And I know Martin Popoff of the Contrarians, a Canadian author, has said many, many times, in his opinion, this is one of the best sounding 1970s albums. Um, just the engineering is beautiful. And I played it last night, and the separation of
Yeah.
instruments, it just sounds wonderful, doesn't it?
Yeah. It doesn't sound overly like, primitive for that era. It still sounds very listenable, very, everything still sounds good. It doesn't, it's not overly dated sound
No,
wise.
no, not at all. All right, well, let's look at the tracks on the album. The first one is "Look at Yourself." What do you think about this song?
Well, I think it's a great lead-off rocker. It's obviously something that still remained in their set forever. Um, Ken sang it. It was one of the few that Ken sang in those early days. Um, it's interesting. A lot of people still debate who sang it. They put it up online. They say, David's vocals on this. Well, it's not David. It's Ken Hensley. So,
Right.
and I think even John Sloman, either in his book or an interview, had said like it was David's vocals on "Look at Yourself" that got him interested. And I had a when I wrote him and told him that was Ken, he's kind of oh, so, but yeah, great leadoff track, and the Osabisa guys guesting at the end, and yeah,
Yeah. Do you think that their vocals are kind of in a similar range, and that's why people are thinking that it is David? Because David's got a very unique
yeah,
set of pipes, and he's let's face it, he's got an operatic range, hasn't he? He can go from
yeah,
the low to the high. So maybe that's why there's that misconception that he actually is singing on this particular track.
yeah. I think probably Ken's probably the closest to him vocally, and I think that's
Mm,
probably for some people that might be easy,
mm.
easily confused, but
Do, do you think this is the most hooky song? Because I'm talking to you now, and the riffs in my head. I need some help here, Kevin. No, seriously, it's I've been
it,
playing this album all week, and this song
yeah,
is just so hooky. The chorus of "Look at Yourself" is just in my head. One thing I really like, I love the keyboards. They're really
yeah,
heavy and punchy. So you had John Lord, in the Purple camp, and he was doing that really heavy metal keyboards. But I think Ken's keyboards are a notch heavier. It's got that
Yeah,
really starchy, punchy feel about it, and you can't deny that the bottom end of Paul Newton, he really propels the song along. His
yeah,
bass playing was grossly underrated, wasn't it?
yeah. And I don't think the guy gets enough credit, right? Like he was, a big part of those first three albums, and on this album, obviously.
And Mick and
So
the Wah,
yeah,
he's having fun
yeah,
with the guitar bits, and the drums. The drumming is all kind of like Ian Clark does this kind of a shuffle all the way, but if you listen to the drums, he does these really nifty fills all the way through the song, and that ending where they're sort of doing an overdub of all these different drums, and it just gets more
yeah.
furious and bigger and bigger and bigger. Can you tell us about that?
I think the ending where you have the Osabisa guys in there, it kind of speeds it up, and I wonder if Jerry back then, because they were on his label, as was Man for Man, if he was kind of having these guys guest to kind of up everybody's profile, but it's adds a good bit. And when they did it live in the early 2000s and had those guys come back, that was quite something as well, right?
It sounds like percussion too. It sounds like you hear a little bit of bongos. There's definitely some percussion. So it's just not drums, but it's the percussion.
Yeah,
But it just adds a lot of oomph to this album, doesn't it? It
yeah.
it adds chaos, but it's not derailing the groove. I think this is a really good
Makes for an
song.
interesting ending.
Yeah.
Makes for an interesting ending as opposed to just fading out, right?
This is almost I think Heap have a number of signature songs, and this is definitely one of their signature songs, wouldn't you
Yeah,
say?
yeah. I think it's one of those half dozen they always have to do.
Absolutely. Now, what about I Want to Be Free? What do you think of this one?
I like it. It's got like, Ken used to talk about in the early days about having light and shade in the songs, and this is one of those songs that's very up and down. It's, you know, quiet and then it's heavy and kind of goes back and forth.
Do you think this
And
is a bit of a precursor to July Morning? The light and shade of this song. I think the track listing on this album is really, really canny, and I think this is gives you a little bit of a hint of what's going to happen with July Morning.
yeah, it's got almost like a shorter, not version of it, but a shorter kind of follows the same kind of path, I guess.
Yeah. Can we talk about the harmonizing of Uriah Heep? You've got to, I don't think they get their due as to how influential they were to a lot of bands, especially UK bands. I reckon Queen were listening to
Clean.
Uriah Heep.
Yeah.
Sweet. Um,
Yeah.
do you think they don't get their due?
Um, for being such a heavy band, no. I mean, they obviously that was one of their things, which obviously they borrowed from Vanilla Fudge of one band. So yeah,
Yeah,
they and on this album, there's different ways they did it on different songs. It's not all the same sort of harmonies and that throughout.
yeah. I mean, you've interviewed the lads, and you probably asked questions about the harmonizing. Did they say that Vanilla Fudge was the influence, or was it something that sort of came to
Yeah,
them more organically?
no, I think Vanilla Fudge was. I think if you had asked Mick or Ken or any of those guys, that Vanilla Fudge was the major influence on them.
Yeah, but I
As far
think
as that
bands like
goes.
Queen and Slade and those '70s glam bands, they weren't listening to Vanilla Fudge. I think they were listening to Uriah Heep. Um,
Yeah, and there's another band I think I mentioned to you last night called Touch from the US that I
uh-huh.
think had a big impact on them as well. Um, that album from 1969. And yeah,
Hmm.
there's a couple of songs in there where you can really hear the vocal harmonies and even some of the lead vocals that are kind of you would think kind of had an impact on David Byron.
Yep,
So
yep. This song has a bit of a stomp to it. I love the bit where it gets really hard, and Mickey's box is punctuating the song with these really heavy downstroke chords. And then it sort of ramps up, I Want to Be Free. Um, Yeah, look, I think this has got one of the smartest arrangements of all of the songs on the album. It starts restrained, it's melancholy, and then it hardens into something that's really riff driven and with this wonderful hooky chorus. And David Byron's voice, it soars. So,
Yeah, it
I
really
think
kind of
that,
speeds up it.
yeah, I think David Byron's vocals in the early 70s were at their most pure. If
Yeah,
you want to hear classic Byron, I think this is a good starting point, isn't it?
yeah.
All right. Well, what can you say about July Morning? I think it's their masterpiece, and I'll put my hand
Yeah.
on the heart and say it's my favorite Heap song, and it's probably their best song, in my opinion. I know other people will have views on this, so um, I'll leave it over to you. Talk me through July Morning.
Well, it's another one. It's another signature song from this album for them, right? It's lengthy. It's obviously compared to Child in Time and Stairway to Heaven. It's got that keyboard intro that Ken does. That's automatically, you know what it is, and mixed soloing throughout. It's quite a big piece.
Yeah, I think
Big,
everyone's just on absolute form. I think it's their most spiritual song. Um,
yeah,
the piano, the organ, guitar, Byron's voice all climb together towards this climax. And I love this. My favorite bits of the song, and I'll ask you what your favorite bits are. I think the quiet bits, where it's just the
yeah,
guitar, the acoustic, it's all quiet, and you just hear David Byron's voice, and it's like the microphone's here, and his mouth is right up close. It's like he's bearing himself. And a lot of his vocals on this album are very emotional, very raw. And that's why I think this is a really good starting point if you want to hear unfiltered, clean vocals from David Byron. What's your favorite bit of this song?
I think as it picks up towards the end, like mixed soloing that, um, it just there's a lot to it, right? You have the quiet parts of David's vocals. You actually have to listen to them, closely, and then it kind of picks up, and then after the solo part, you have the great outro with Mick and that.
A lot of folks take umbrage with David Byron when he goes full operatic and he goes to that high bit. You know what I mean? Now you're having a bit of
Yeah,
a bit of a laugh there. You know what I'm talking about.
yeah.
Um,
Too much on
I'll
this
be
song, but
Yeah, I must admit, when I first heard this song, I thought, "Oh, okay, he's going in a bit of a different direction here." But a lot of folks are influenced by him.
yeah,
In metal, in hard rock, I think that he's right up there with Ian Gillan as being very influential to what does the archetypical heavy metal singer need to sound like. I'm talking about Bruce Dickinson. I'm even talking about extreme artists like King Diamond, who
yeah.
cite David Byron as one of their idols. So yeah, what's your take on when he goes full on falsetto and that real operatic?
It's very different, obviously, because none of those other guys at the time, like Ozzy and those guys, weren't doing that sort of thing. The only guy that he kind of not reminds me of, but that also did that earlier to him was Arthur Brown, right? When he could go from a soft vocal to just wailing away. So
Wailing away. Yeah, and but mate, it's like he's got the switch and it just turns it very quickly.
yeah,
It doesn't progress. He just goes from one to the other.
yeah,
But it's a 10 out of 10 song.
yeah.
It's really up there, and I think any compilation of Uriah Heep or greatest hard rock songs of the '70s, you've got to talk about this. All right. Well, then we go to Tears in My Eyes. I love the slide of Ken. It's Ken Hensley, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
yeah, Ken put
really,
all the slide on the.
oh, very hooky, bluesy. What do you think of this?
I think it's great. It's very there's so much to it. A lot of changes and change in pace, and you know. Yeah, Ken slide is obviously a big part of this, right?
Yeah. And I love that la 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 vocal harmonizing. It reminds me of those harmony groups of the early 70s, like the Swingle Singers. Look that up, folks. You'll know what I'm talking about. This is a headphones album. I was
Yeah,
listening on the headphones, and you hear the guitars go from one ear to the other. It's like, woo, going from one side to the other. Amazing
yeah,
production on this.
yeah. There's a lot going on in this one, right?
Yeah. And I like how it changes time signature and it goes into this bonkers bluesy riff that kind of swings. And you got the tambourine comes out and then it goes back to the reprise. So that's one thing about Heat. There's still got that proggy element, or still got that element where on a dime they will just switch time signatures and go into a different sort of a chordal change, and
Yeah,
the song completely changes and goes in a different direction.
yeah.
All right, Shadows of Grief. What do you think of this one?
Well, I think it's probably their heaviest song, and I think vocally, David is this is one of his better ones as far as changing, being going from that soft vocal to being a very hard vocal, and yeah, a lot of vocal arrangements on this one. The harmonies, not very it like I mentioned the Touch album earlier. I think if you listen to that album or well, the song I sent you and listen to this, you kind of get an idea where maybe some of that might have come from. So
Do you think this is their most proggiest song? This is where they still haven't kind of they've still got the prog cloak around their sound. Like there's one bit of the song where it's going into full on ELP territory. There's the call and response between the keyboard and guitar. I love it, but
yeah,
it's you know you've got this cyclic melody, you've got the harmonies. It's all carefully arranged. To me, it sounds like prog.
yeah, yeah, and that's like well the third epic piece on this album that you following from Tears in My Eyes. It's two very different tracks that have a lot of changes and
I think it's the darkest song on the album. There's no
yeah,
sweetness and light on this particular song, isn't it? Because you've got this. It's kind of doomy. It's got this doom intensity,
yeah,
and then it goes into psychedelia. So that's one
yeah,
thing I like about the early years of Uriah Heep, because they had all these different influences, and you just don't know what direction the album's going to go.
yeah. And I can't think of any other Heap song where David does that vocal where he's got that angrier tone. You know what I mean? When you say it's darker.
Yeah, I agree with you. It really captures the emotional turmoil of the lyrics. He's really getting
Yeah,
behind the lyrics when he's singing. He's a very expressive singer. Um,
yeah.
do you think he gets his due in the pantheon of vocalists? I think, unfortunately,
No,
and I've got to be honest, and I might get criticism on the channel, but I think a lot of people forget about him, and that's a bit sad.
yeah,
Because when you talk about hard rock vocalists, you get the Plants, the Gillans, the Paul
yeah,
Rodgers, the Coverdales. He kind of is forgotten, and that should not be the case, should it, Kevin?
yeah. And he is very much in a kind of almost like in a class of his own as far as that operatic style. Like I said, I mentioned Arthur Brown before. Um, Freddie Mercury would have probably taken a bit from him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And people kind of focus on the sordid side of the story. It was sort of like the rise and fall, because it is a
yeah,
tragic story, isn't it?
yeah,
Somebody that died very young and had so much to give.
yeah. But I don't see how, like, I know Ken wrote most of the songs, but how anybody else could have pulled off those songs because, like Ken would have said, like, said many times that David really kind of lived the songs. It wasn't just merely singing them. And you can tell with each of these songs, he kind of, it's almost like he's in a character, doing
Yeah,
those songs.
yeah, yeah. When do you think that, because his voice, his vocals are very engaged in these albums, but I think towards the middle 70s, you could sort of tell he wasn't as engaged. His vocals aren't as good. He's kind of phoning it in. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, maybe it's due to the fact that the change in direction and the the band was, producing more and kind of shorter songs and less theatrical.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, well, let's go to What Should Be Done. I think this is the most haunting song on the album.
yeah,
Another one where I think he's really singing close to the mic and he's kind of vulnerable, very fragile, but he's the star of the song. It's a vehicle for him. What do you think of this song?
yeah. It's a very different ballad. It's very, the piano and the guitar in the end there. Yeah, it's got a kind of that haunting, quiet vocal. There's not, and I was listening to that today, and there's no, for all the ballads he did back then, there's no other one like it. Nothing you can compare it to, right?
No, no. And to me, I don't know. I had this, it comes to the back of my head that this is something that like a Procol Harum could do. It's in that sort of territory. I like the Sonics. I like how they're exploring this. But yeah, this is easily one of the most haunting songs on the album. And again, listen to it on the headphones. There's a lot going
Yeah,
on, and the production is just it is just spot on.
yeah,
Uh,
and it's perfect where it fits on the album as well. Like the two previous songs, then what's next? Like,
I wouldn't change a thing, Kevin. I wouldn't
yeah,
change a thing, mate. Love Machine, meat and potatoes. Uriah Heep. Got to get the boogie
yeah,
shuffle out, eh? Get the shuffle shoes. What do you think of this one?
yeah. It's a great rocker. It's one of those early ones you can put it alongside Look at Yourself and Easy Living and all that. It's a shame it eventually got dropped from the set. So, yeah, it's got everything to it that Heap rockers were about. So,
This is Heap. Wearing the denim jacket, the denim, the denim jeans. The
yeah,
riff is catchy, the chorus immediate, and the groove is tight. So this is like
yeah,
classic Heap rockin', and to me, it's like easy living. I love it. I think it's great.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but every single Heap album has something like this, isn't there? There's always
yeah,
a boogie shuffle, and I think this is one of the better ones. So you
yeah.
could probably do a compilation called Uriah Heep Boogie Shufflers, and this would be my favorite. I love it.
It's interesting that the album begins and ends with the two shortest to the point rockers, and everything in between is just so different and interesting.
Yep, 7 songs,
Yeah,
not an inch of fat. I just recently did on the channel Rainbow Rising, uh, you
yeah,
know, and covering and saying that's one of the greatest albums of the 70s. This is right up there, in my opinion.
yeah,
And I just love it in those days where you didn't have to put 15 tracks on the album, the CD
yeah,
age. Just put 7, not an inch of fat. Love it.
yeah. And it's interesting that during this era they had so much extra material that of those two or three songs that were left off and came out on the remasters and that, there's nothing you could take off the album, no matter how good those other songs are that you want to replace.
Well, I was going to talk to you about that. I think the song, is it What's Inside My Heart?
Yeah,
I love that song.
yeah. But where would it fit on the album? There's nothing you would take off to,
No, you
you know,
wouldn't. You would probably store it and put it on Wonderwall
yeah.
or one of those other albums. I don't know. Those extra tracks, I'm sorry, putting you on the spot. Which ones would what ones do you like out of those extra Uriah
Well,
Heep
why
tracks?
obviously why 14 minutes is one.
That's a goodie.
What's within my heart.
Love that song. Love it.
Yeah. But again, where would you put it on the album? That's right.
Yeah, if you put it on the album, it's too ballad heavy. It kind of there's an imbalance, isn't it? There's too many ballads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've often thought like in that time period between Salisbury to Demons and Wizards and well even Ken's first solo album that there's so much material and so much good songs left over. You could almost put another album in there somewhere.
Yep, absolutely. Now, the one thing I want to talk to you about that I was actually fascinated is this album was still not, it charted reasonably well in Australia. I think it went to number
Yeah,
19 in Europe, but still in their homeland,
yeah,
you know, it didn't go gangbusters, did it?
no, that's strange because I mean, there's a few songs in there that would have made decent singles at the time.
Yeah. So it's really the next lineup, the classic lineup that everyone sort of
Yeah,
talks about, the Demons and Wizards and Magician's Birthday, where they started to make really inroads and were starting to sell records and make inroads in America. But this lineup is very underrated, but albeit was only brief, wasn't it?
yeah, it's kind of almost too bad you don't get another album with Ian Clark on drums and Paul Newton. I don't think like without Paul, the band wouldn't have happened. He was kind of that connection between the gods and Spice, and
He's the foundation bass player. He was the
yeah,
original bass player in Uriah
yeah.
Heep.
And
But
they had a lot of high profile bass players, and he, kind of
he's right up there.
overlooked. But this album is the one that kind of, Demons and Wizards obviously commercially broke them, but people go back to this one, I think.
Yep. Um,
And
let's briefly talk about the album cover before we wrap it
yeah,
up. So I think that was I like the album cover. I think you're looking at it in the record store, it's reflective. You can sort of see your face, and it's
yeah,
saying this album is about you. You can make it
yeah,
whatever you want it to be. So
yeah.
this is in the era like the Beatles' White Album. It's
Hmm.
the color white. Basically you look at it and it can be anything you want it to be. And I think it was really clever that Uriah Heep were picking at it and taking that one notch further and making it reflective, making into it like
Yeah.
a mirror. So
Well, I mean, back then they would have named the albums always had something to do with the song titles, and then I believe it was
mm,
Mick that came up with this idea.
yeah, that's the American version where it's on the edge, the
Yeah,
perimeter. It's kind of a dark and yeah.
yeah, like almost like brown or
Mm,
brownish gray, bronze, whatever you want to call it.
yep. So
Well,
um, I'll ask you again, where do you think this stands in the discography of Uriah Heep in 2026 years?
I still think it's a top two album, and I think you find fans on either side, but we'll debate this one or Demons and Wizards.
I think it's my number one. It's my favorite. I love it. And Demons and Wizards, I rank right up there. And you know my views about the Pete
Yeah,
Dolby era as well, but this is my favorite.
yeah,
I think it's just the song arrangements, the track listing, the playing, the singing, everything is just perfect. And 7 tracks, no fat.
yeah. I think the energy on this album is something that Heap didn't really recapture a lot after this, and that kind of the experimentation that they did with some of those songs that after a few more albums that they kind of lost.
Yep, yep. Kevin, wonderful having you on the channel. Kevin's the Uriah Heep expert, and we're going to have plenty more shows on Rock Daydream Nation. Folks, tell us what you think at Look At Yourself. I love this album. Your favorite songs, any anecdotes you want to share. We love reading your comments. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation, and there'll be more shows in 2026 and beyond. Once again, Kevin, wonderful having you on the show, and we'll see you soon. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. All the
Yeah,
best. See ya. Bye.
you too.